Welcome to Americans Learn. We're like steamrolling through a whole bunch of like Christmas stuff today, if I can, just because I waited really late to start. You're welcome. I'm sorry. I forgot that Christmas was a thing that happened. Like I said in one of the other videos, like this is the Christmasiest thing that I own. Like this is the Christmasiest thing that I own, and we're gonna use Christmasiest as a word from now on, because I've declared it so. Anyway, today it was suggested that I do a tasting history with Max Miller and eggnog. So George Washington's eggnog or something is apparently going to be part of it. And the suggestion also included like possibly doing a part 2 to this, wherein I try to make the eggnog itself. We will see. I'll see what is happening with this. I'll see what the ingredient is, like what the time frame on it is. And if I can, I will. And if I can't, I won't. So we'll see. I still have 5 days, so we'll see. We'll see. 'Tis the phrase of the day, is we'll see. But yeah, no, I'm just like, hey, look, we got booze, we got Christmas. This is right up my alley. Let us begin.
Eggnog is one of those holiday drinks that you either love or you really hate. Personally, I love it, especially when it is made from scratch, because it doesn't actually taste like what you're going to get at the store. And that is why today I am making from scratch George Washington's unbelievably boozy eggnog.
See, I am excited about this. The biggest issue I have with eggnog is the eggs. And it's very dairy heavy, very egg heavy, from what I understand in the name only. So whenever I have eggnog, I'm not great friends with either of those things. So, I mean, I like them, but they don't like me. So I can only ever have like a little bit. But maybe if I just add up the booze.
But did our founding father actually make this eggnog? We'll discuss that and more, this time on Tasting History.
Exciting. Oh my. I love that like snide little kid, like just giving that fat king his dessert there. Just like that little kid going, you know I spat in this one.
So with the holidays upon us, I wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you for the most amazing gift that I never knew I wanted. And that is for you all watching Tasting History all year, my Tastorians. It has been absolutely mind-blowing. I think that my goal at the beginning of the year was to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That was the goal, and we made it, because I think that we're sitting at around 450,000 right now, maybe even a little bit more by the time I post this. So awesome. Thank you so much. And if you haven't subscribed,
I need to do more original content.
Do it now. Maybe we'll hit 500 by the end of the year.
Not that anyone ever watches
That's actually too much
any
pressure.
of my original content that I've
Thank
ever
you
posted.
for watching. Anyway, George Washington's eggnog. 1 quart cream, 1 quart milk, 1 dozen tablespoons sugar, 1 pint brandy, a half pint rye whiskey, a half pint Jamaica rum, a quarter pint sherry.
Crap.
Mix liquor first, then separate yolks and whites of 12 eggs. Add sugar to beaten yolks.
Eggs.
Mix well.
Okay. I mean, let's take a little screenshot. Where's print screen? There. Took a little screenshot. I don't know if this is gonna happen, y'all. I do not have any of this stuff.
Add milk and cream.
Half a pint of white rye whiskey. That's so
slowly
much.
beating.
Oh my God.
Beat whites and eggs until stiff and fold slowly into mixture. Let set in cool place for several days.
Yeah, I would have to make
Taste
it today.
frequently.
And
I like that last
today.
instruction. Taste frequently.
I do
and
like
I
that
took
last
that to
instruction.
heart all week long, though I'm not exactly sure what I was supposed to be tasting for, but I did as George Washington suggests. And that brings me to the question, is this actually George Washington's recipe? Well, according to the Farmer's Almanac, yes, it is. Supposedly, it came from the kitchen papers at Mount Vernon.
Dang.
But in every collection of the kitchen papers that I could find, I didn't find this recipe. And in fact, the first time that this recipe seems to have come about wasn't until 1948 in a book called Christmas with the Washingtons by Olive Bailey. And she doesn't really cite her sources. Not that it's the kind of book that you would expect that, but still not a lot of help. So could it even be George Washington's recipe? Yeah, it could. It does read like a recipe from the time period, from like the late 1700s. And we do have recipes from George Washington, who actually wrote them down. We have one for beer that he did. And this recipe includes rye whiskey. George was a big fan. He actually had one of the largest rye whiskey distilleries in America at the time.
Learning all sorts of things
about
about
eggnog
good
was a
old
very popular
George.
drink in the late 1700s. But could it be that Miss Bailey just took another recipe and attributed it to George Washington as an act of literary license? Yes, maybe. We'll probably never know. But I ask you,
Secrets!
does it matter?
History.
It reads like a historical recipe, it's filled with booze, and maybe it is just another one of those pieces of lore surrounding George Washington, like his false teeth being made of wood or chopping down the cherry tree, I cannot tell a lie. But while those are a little hard to swallow, I don't think this one's going to be.
I know,
So
it sounds good. It is one of those things that someone suggested I like put it together. If I had even half of those ingredients, I would be a little bit more willing to consider it. But I don't think I can, especially because I would never ever use like any of them ever again. Like I would never use the brandy. I would never use the sherry. At least the eggs would get in the eggnog, but again, I could only drink 1 cup and my roommate can't do dairy, so she could only drink 1 cup, and it's just like I feel like monetarily it would not work out. Although tell you what, if this video gets 1,000 likes, I will make it. I mean, the channel has 20,000 subscribers or something. If this video gets 1,000 likes, I will make this eggnog.
It is 1 quart or 950 milliliters of cream, 1 quart or 950 milliliters of whole milk,
Oh my
3/4 of a
God.
cup or 150 grams of sugar, 12 medium eggs,
So expensive.
or 10 large eggs or 8 extra large eggs, 2 cups or 475 milliliters of brandy, 1 cup or 235 milliliters rye whiskey, 1 cup or 235 milliliters dark rum,
See, I don't mind
and
having
a
the
half
whiskey or
cup
the rum.
of sherry.
Those things
You
I
want to
would
use
have.
something like a cream sherry, a little bit sweeter than a really dry sherry, though either
to
one will
know.
work, but stay away from that cooking sherry. In fact, just leave that at the store.
Okay.
Now there is one ingredient that is missing that is included in a lot of other contemporary eggnog recipes, and that is nutmeg. So, as to not upset John Townsend, I am going to add some nutmeg. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon into the whole recipe, and then I'll probably grate a little bit on top at the end as well. But it is optional. It's not included in the original recipe, but it's gonna make things taste better. So the recipe says to mix the liquors first. I honestly don't know why, but that's what the recipe says, so that's what I did. Next, separate your eggs and add the yolks to a bowl and beat them until they go from a dark yellow to a nice pale yellow.
Beat them until
Then
cream.
slowly beat in the sugar. It's important that you do this just a little bit at a time. If you put it all in, it's not going to incorporate properly.
Okay, good to know.
Beating
I'm
slowly,
not much of a
add in
baker,
your
so.
milk and your cream. Now I started with what I thought was going to be a big enough bowl, but
It's a drink,
clearly I
makes
didn't
sense.
do my math right, and it was not big enough at all, so I had to switch to my Le Creuset Dutch oven.
Yeah, I would have to buy a bowl too, because I do not. Or maybe Colin has a chili pot. I could probably use that. It's like a big chili pot. Again, 1,000 likes.
You can feel free to cut it in half, because this recipe really is like enough for an entire party. But if you are going to make the full recipe,
But even
make sure
that-
to get the biggest bowl that you possibly can.
Even if I cut it in half.
Then add in the liquor and mix everything
Very
together
expensive.
until nice and smooth. If you are going to add nutmeg or any other spices, cinnamon or ginger or whatever you want, go ahead and do that right now. Next, with either beaters or a whisk your egg whites until they form nice stiff peaks.
Damn,
One
that
important
looks
note,
like magic.
if you are going to be using the same beaters that you used on the egg yolks, make sure to wash and dry them thoroughly, because even a little bit of yolk can stop the whites from achieving the nice stiff peaks that you're looking for.
Also, I think I would have to practice making those peaks happen. I've never ever done that before ever in my life. I've never even tried. I've never done a recipe that's complicated like that.
Then, ever
don't know if
so
I could do
slowly,
it.
fold the beaten egg whites into the yolk and cream mixture until
Fold it,
nicely
David!
incorporated. Now at this point, you should have
I wish he'd showed us folding it a little bit more, because I still don't know. I, much like David and Moira Rose, have no idea what that means.
frothy eggnog, and really you can actually drink it right now, but it does say to let it age for a few days in a nice cool spot, so I put mine into the refrigerator for 5 days. Make sure to cover it though. Now while we wait for our nog to age, all the while tasting frequently, let's take a gander at this creamy yet polarizing Christmas cocktail.
Okay, let's go.
Eggnog, eggs, and nog. What is nog? Sounds like something that Pinky would say. Nog! There are actually a few theories kicking around as to where this term nog comes from. In 1693, the Dean of Norwich in England, a Mr. Humphrey Prideaux, wrote, "You will find him walking about his room with a pipe in his mouth, and a bottle of claret and a bottle of old strong beer, which in this country they call nog, upon the table."
Oh, okay.
So maybe it's this strong beer, this nog, that lent its name to what we're making today. Eggs in strong beer makes eggnog. And there is actually another drink called posset, which had been consumed at least since the Middle Ages, that was usually made with milk and strong beer, though it could also be done with wine, and later recipes call for eggs. So
okay, I've heard of the word posset. I've never heard what it is, but I think, I don't know, that sounds familiar. Maybe it's like I read it in a Charles Dickens book or something, I don't know.
So it seems a natural evolution, kind of makes sense. Interesting, if slightly off-putting fact about this alcohol-curdled milk drink called posset is that today, posset or posseting refers to when a baby spits up milk after feeding. So I think we should change that to eggnogging. You want to...
Gross. I hate that. I hate that a lot, actually. That's bad. Disagree. Hard no. I don't know if that is where I've heard the term posset before. I don't know. I read it in a book.
Definitely wear that little blanket over your shoulder so the baby doesn't eggnog all down your back.
I need you to not.
Another theory is that the word comes from the word noggin, which before it meant your head, referred to a wooden cup. And then another is that it actually came from the word nug, which in Scotland at the time was an ale that was warmed by sticking a red-hot poker in it. Possible.
Clever! Little hot cider. Ooh, good job, Scotsman.
The last theory is that it's a contraction of the words egg and grog, though I don't think that's right because, one, it didn't come around until the 1980s, this theory. Two, there's almost no evidence for it because if it had been egg and grog, surely there would have been a point in time where it was egg-grog.
Right?
And we never see that happening. So how it turned into eggnog, that just doesn't make sense. But regardless of where the name came from, it gained popularity in America around the mid-18th century. Fog drams in the morn, or better still, eggnog. At night, hot suppings, and at midday, grog. My palate can regale.
I like this guy. That's definitely how you want to spend your Christmas. I like it. Also, a little bit of rum chata into coffee.
First written mentions of eggnog from 1775, written by a Mr. Jonathan Boucher, or Boucher. He was English, so it's impossible to say how he pronounced it, but it kind of reminds me of the Keeping Up Appearances quote, "Boucher residence, lady of the house speaking." Except that was Bouquet residence, but if you've never watched that show, it's really funny. What's interesting in regards to our recipe today is that this Mr. Boucher, or Boucher, was actually a good friend of George Washington and even taught his stepson, John Custis. Kind of weird, right? There's another contemporary story from Virginia where Washington lived that impresses me to no end. See, in today's drinking contest, you're rarely asked to do more than throw a ping pong ball into a cup 6 feet away. Not that hard. But in the 18th century, it seems that they liked to test their mental acuity when they were drunk. On last Christmas Eve, several gentlemen met at Northampton Courthouse and spent the evening in mirth and festivity, when eggnog was the principal liquor used by the company. After they had indulged pretty freely in this beverage, a gentleman in company offered a bet that not one of the party could write 4 verses extempore, which should be rhyme and sense. The author then goes on to tell how this...
So you have to write a poem after you've been drinking. See, I've done video game drinking games, like Mario Party drinking games and things like that, which definitely get harder the more you drink and the more you fail and the more shots you have to take.
Supposedly inebriated contestant spits out off the cuff a poem which extols the virtues of eggnog over wine, and includes the stanza,
Nice.
"'Tis eggnog now, whose golden streams dispense far richer treasures to the ravished sense. The muse from wine derives a transient glare, but eggnog's daughters afford her solid fare." I can't imagine being able to come up with that completely sober with as much time as I was allowed. I'm always impressed by 18th and 19th century people and their ability to craft things with words. Clearly
They
something
read
I
more.
do not possess.
I feel like they read more, you know? They read more. This is a great screenshot of him. Sorry, my dude, for stopping you there. Ooh, I did you dirty. I did you real dirty, Mr. Miller.
Craft things with words. Anyway, by this
Craft
writing,
things
we
with
can see
words.
that Christmas and eggnog had a connection. It was being drunk on Christmas Eve. But where did that connection come from? We don't really know. I mean, it could have been served hot at times, which would make sense to have it then in the winter months. Other drinks, such as the nug that I mentioned, as well as something called smoking bishop that was popular in the 19th century.
Ooh, I have an idea. Because you have to store it somewhere cool, right? So it makes more sense to make this kind of drink in the winter months because you don't have a refrigerator. So you have to make it while it's cold outside because you have to like store all of these like really highly perishable materials. The cream, the milk, the eggs. Well, the eggs not so much at the time, but the cream and the milk should still be cool, right? So like it's easier to store that for longer in a winter setting.
Where they would take a red hot poker and stick it into the drink to warm it up were very, very popular at the time, so maybe they did the same thing with eggnog, who knows. Also, Christmas being a special occasion, it might have warranted the cost of making eggnog, because even without the liquor, the eggs, the cream, and especially the sugar were very, very expensive at the time.
Well, what if if you had a cow and a chicken, right? So say you have some farm animals at your disposal, you could make it a lot cheaper.
It was even enough to possibly put a dint in old, wealthy Washington's purse. In a letter written on December 26, 1788, Washington admitted, "I have never before felt the want of cash so severely as at present. And of course, any moneys that may arise from my property under your care could never come more opportunely than at this time." Now, was it really eggnog that made him cash poor that year, or had he been remodeling his kitchen or impulse bought a horse? Who knows? But it is clear that the Washingtons did like to splurge at the holidays. They would often host large parties with guests staying at Mount Vernon. They would go fox hunting and drinking and have exotic animals come visit. Yes, in his Christmas expense ledger in 1787, Washington wrote, "By the man who brought a camel from Alexandria for a show, 18 shillings. After the fox hunting and the camel peeping, there were often big meals, something that Washington once referred to as the attack of Christmas pies, which I just love.
That's
there
so
was
good.
one pie that they had that was a turkey, a goose, a fowl, a partridge, and a pigeon baked into a crust. Then on Twelfth Night, Martha Washington would serve her famous great cake, which was made with 40 eggs and 4 pounds of butter. So between that and the eggnog, the poor chickens and cows of Mount Vernon must have found Christmas time very taxing.
Oh my God!
And add insult to injury, a camel is getting all of the attention. Really not fair. But you really can't fault poor George Washington for wanting to splurge a little bit at the holidays, because for much of his life, Christmas sucked. In 1740, when George was only 8 years old, his home on Ferry Farm burnt down on Christmas Eve. Then during Christmas of 1753, during the French and Indian War, George got shot at by a group of French Indians at a place endearingly called Murdering Town. Then in 1777...
Sounds like the Murder Park in Baltimore. I think it's actually called Leakin, but...
And during the American Revolution, while running low on food and whiskey, Washington and his army of 12,000 spent Christmas at Valley Forge, where upwards of 1 out of 6 of them would die. And then on Christmas Day in 1790, George found out that his favorite horse, Nelson, the horse that had got him through the Revolutionary War, had died. Aww. I mean, come on. Give this man a break. Christmas hasn't been this hard on a George since It's a Wonderful Life. But just as George Bailey, in hindsight, had some really wonderful Christmases, so too did George Washington. One of his most memorable was in
I don't know if I'd count this
1776,
as a
when he
wonderful
crossed the
Christmas.
Delaware to
I mean,
surprise a camp of Hessian
a
mercenaries.
good one, sure.
Cold
like,
and wet perhaps at the time, in hindsight, it was a
Ultimately-
very good Christmas for our founding father. Now, in contrast to the popular myth
Cemented
that the Germans who were fighting on behalf of the
trajectory
English
to
were
victory.
drunk that day, John Greenwood, a Continental soldier who was actually there, wrote, "I am willing to go upon oath that I did not see even a solitary drunken soldier belonging
That's
to
the
the
first
enemy."
I've ever heard that. I've only ever heard that they were drunk.
Fortunately for me, I don't have any battles to fight today, so I look forward to having a nice cup of George Washington's eggnog. So after a few days, or really whenever you want, go ahead and serve yourself a glass of eggnog. As I said, I'm going to grate a little fresh nutmeg on top. And here we are.
It does look good.
George Washington eggnog. Maybe. Eggnog all the same.
We'll say it is.
Let's give it a try.
It's fun if it is.
Top is foamy.
Yeah.
That is good. Oh my gosh, that is so strong.
I do like a strong
It really
booze.
hits you. At first, it's like, oh, it's sweet and creamy, and then it's like, oh, it's sweet and creamy. It doesn't taste anything like modern day eggnog.
Oh,
Like-
sick.
What you would get at
Okay.
the store. I mean, it's just, it's totally different. It's creamy and rich, but it's not thick. And you know, sometimes like it
Yeah, it can get
coats
really-
the stuff that you get at the
Yeah.
store like coats your throat. This isn't. It's much lighter actually. It's very boozy. It's really good. I would actually add a little bit of cinnamon or ginger or more nutmeg, you know, to kind of make the flavors come alive even more. But as it is, it's really, really good.
Good to know.
So instead of a standard Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, I'm going to leave you with some words from George Washington himself.
Do tell.
We remain in status quo and all unite in offering you and yours the compliments of the season and the return of many, many more and happy ones.
Aw.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks, George. It does look good. All right. Okay, and like I said, if this video gets 1,000 likes, I'll make this. I might do a halfie, but I'll make it. I say this with the full knowledge that this video is going to get at most 480 views. Like, no. It's like no one's watching it. So it's like, oh, all right. Make me eat my words. And I'll drink some nog. I do hope that you all have a very Merry Christmas. If you celebrate, happy holiday season, regardless. This is a very weird time. So, you know, I hope that everyone is doing okay. And I will see you all soon. Happy holidays.